this back later. But I'm Rebekah Pierce. I am your lemonade mindset strategist. That is my Substack that I write, the Lemonade Mindset. And I also have the short story or the fiction, my fiction category, where you're reading the opening chapters of Captain Jack, my pirate story that I'm working on. And but I wanted to do my first live on Substack to talk about the power of storytelling, storytelling as resistance, storytelling as self care. Um, I have a new Substack. I have two Substacks out today. One for Captain Jack, that's chapter 3. I hope you'll read that. It's I want you to read it because it's connected in many ways to what I'm talking about in the Lemonade Mindset Substack, which is I'm talking about being called mean and what that looks like in retrospection. Right? Hi, Natisha. How are you? Thank you for joining me. So I wanted to talk about how finding the courage to tell our stories is an act of resistance to the propaganda or the ideology or the belief system, especially for Black women, that we are cold, heartless, greedy, this or that, don't have don't have uh, the worth that the world says certain people should have to get XYZ. So if you read chapter 3 today of Captain Jack, we're talking about Jacqueline um, being her secret being discovered, which is that she's literate, and how her mother, who has known all along but has helped her keep that secret, didn't want to out her daughter, basically now sees how this literacy is going to, well, can be used to build resistance. And that's the power of storytelling, how we can use our stories to begin resistance, the pushback against these narratives about who has worth and and who does not. So when you're reading Captain Jack today, chapter 3, and I hope you go back and, of course, review chapter 2, chapter 1, the prologue, you'll see that I'm beginning to interweave this conversation, this narrative about Black women, the existence of Black women and reclamation through storytelling, and how our healing, the wounds that many of us carry still, how we can begin to what I talked about in my post on Wellness Wednesday, which was um, how to seal and receive, right? How to seal the wound and then receive, right? So I hope you'll take a look at that again, go back and look at Captain Jack and kind of see where I'm going. And I hope to answer the questions that I have at the end of each chapter because I need help to make sure the story makes sense and that it's moving forward. I mean, I know it's just, again, it's historic fiction, so it's not going to necessarily move as quickly in terms of pace as a regular, as a fiction novel might, but there's a buildup that I hope that you're curious about, that you'll stay for to find out. So the backstory to Captain Jack and why a Black female pirate this time, why we want to center her in a narrative is very much related to the post I have today about she was mean, but she's ours. So if you've read that, I talk about how I've heard that word about me all my life for the most part, but how hearing it now as a woman who is coming into her healing, I realized that that was my form of protection against what was happening to me and to my family, what was happening to us individually and collectively, the trauma that we were experiencing, that we were going through, and then the predators that were in existence around us. And oh, thank you, Natisha. Girl, it brought you to tears. You tried to write it. But I felt compelled to write it. There are a couple topics that are on my mind to write. They're heavy topics, but I think it is time to have these conversations because um, it's a weight to continue to hold them, and it is affecting our physical, mental, and spiritual, and even financial health, our well-being, to continue to hold on to the trauma of the past, and then when it comes back for us, because remember, the thing you always run from is the thing that will always find you. But when it comes for you, when it comes back to you, how you manage it this time. So, as I said in my piece today, instead of uh, denying that I was mean or, getting offended about it, I had to sit there and reflect and say, that is accurate. And then, but go further and say, but why? I was just a child. I was a little girl. Why was I so angry? Why was I so mean? And you know, how when did I let that go and why? And how has it enabled me to grow into my humanity, to my motherness, all those things, right? How I've been able to do that. So, this is what I love about telling stories. This is what I love about literature. In that in stories, we can find ourselves and turn on another light here. In the stories we read, if they're well written, and got a really good protagonist and a plot, these stories, whether they're fiction or nonfiction, can be resources and tools for us to begin our self care, working on ourselves, freeing ourselves. Resistance isn't always about an external battle. Resistance can also be internal. So, fighting letting go, because a lot of people want to hold on to pain. Why? Because it's easy. It's easy to hold on to pain and to blame others for why you haven't prospered or grown. There's in anatomy and physiology, which I taught for a long time. We know that it takes more muscles to make a frown than it does to smile. In fact, it only takes like 3 muscles to smile, and it takes something like 20 something muscles to frown. So literally, it is a choice that we make, a conscious choice we make every day to smile, and a conscious choice we make to frown. The muscles that you have to activate to put into place to frown, boy, that's a lot of effort. And so this is it's storytelling, being able to sit down and tell a story, tell your story as I teach my students. This is why writing is such a sacred intentional act, because in revealing our vulnerabilities, we are not only creating this space for us to heal as a storyteller, but the storyteller is allowing for a space to be created for the reader to then begin to find ways to heal, right? Which Satan teaches the storytelling of our different emotions and characteristics at various times in our lives really gives us a different perspective of things. Absolutely, especially as we get older. Like Rebecca, the Rebecca in her 30s would have never been able to sit through hearing what my brother said about me. She couldn't have handled it. She would have went off probably. Even though I had made the decision, even though when I had my son, my first child, I had decided that I didn't want to pass. Um, when I had my son in 2001, I had just reconnected with our father that had abandoned us as children. It had been, in and out of our lives for years, no real connection whatsoever. But he had come back. He had remarried this other, another woman, and he was back in my life, and I made a conscious decision once I had my son to not pass on hate, to not pass on anger. I wanted my son to find out for himself who this person was, and then to make this decision as he got older as to whether or not he wanted to have a relationship with my dad. Um, and it was the best thing I could have done because it then allowed me to begin to analyze and assess my own relationship with this person and then the relationship with myself. So I couldn't have withstood that kind of what would have looked like to me in my 30s as an attack, saying that I was mean. But now, as a 52-year-old woman who has had many lived experiences, who has come through different forms of trauma, on top of that, I realized that that was in fact true. I own that because I was a child. And I didn't know how to say, I'm hurt. I didn't know how to process abandonment by the man who was supposed to be my dad. I didn't understand that. And my siblings were all a year apart. They didn't understand it either. So this need at 12 to control the remote control. Well, there wasn't a remote back then, right? But the need to control the TV, I had to control something because I had no control over the fact that uh, that he was gone, that we were going to be homeless, that there were predators, there were men watching and waiting to get a hold of me and my sister, that my brothers were now moving in a direction that was violent with gang membership and things like that. And I didn't know how to express that I was scared. And so the only thing I could do was to hold on to the TV channels and make them watch these shows with me. And it's funny the shows that I picked because I picked a lot of comedies, right? Three's Company is a comedy, right? And the Monkeys and all the little shows I used to make them watch. I Dream of Jeannie, Bewitched, um, Petticoat Junction, all these little crazy shows that I made my siblings watch. But it it was my safe place at the moment. And then as I got older, as I said, as I got older and had more experiences, especially when I went into the military and realized why I had joined, because I was running and then ran right into the arms of more predators, right? And then becoming a mother and having that shift in thinking about what it means to inherit, what it means to inherit anger, what it means to inherit hate. That's not what I wanted to give. My dad hated his father. My grandfather hated his father. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to figure out how to heal in the best way possible. Thank you for joining me. Those of you who've just tuned in, thank you so much for joining me today. Again, I'm Rebecca, and we're talking about again storytelling as resistance and self care. And so I'm kind of moving in and out between the chapter 3 that I released for Captain Jack, which is showcasing Jacquot now being admitting that she is literate and how her community is going to ask her to use that gift to free them. And then also talking about how that kind of goes in line with the story of me as a young girl being mean, those connect that connection, that thin thread for Black girls in particular of finding self through the story, through the pen, through the paper. And so, again, if you have any questions, please ask me here. I'm gonna try to do a live like this at least once a week. I'm probably gonna have to do this again because, there are people on the West Coast who follow me and they're not available right now. Timing is always, an issue when you're got audiences everywhere. But anyways, I, but in looking at being vulnerable, particularly for Black women, it is the scariest, hardest thing for us to do because we are judged at a much more crucial and cruel place than other women. And so every time I sit down to pen, every time I sit down to tell a story, again, I teach my students that writing is a sacred, intentional act. I believe that with all my heart and soul. I do not play with the pen. I don't play with the writing. And I don't allow my students to play with the writing or my clients to play with the writing. Because once you put it down, it is forever. You are bringing to life or putting to death something. And I'm cognizant of that every time I sit down and open myself up. But I'm opening myself up because I know that there's healing in telling our stories. And but sometimes for Black women, we only tell the surface level of a story because we don't want to be attacked anymore, right? Right. Thank you, Miss Main. Yes, being vulnerable as a Black woman, it is not easy. But as a womanist, as a now practicing womanist, we're gonna have to move beyond that or move forward on that. And but not without first building a village, not without first building community to hold us up. Because it is it can be dangerous to be too vulnerable, right? But we need vulnerability. I heard it said once that vulnerability is just it's naming what you need. And that is such a profound saying, that vulnerability is naming what you need. And for many of us Black women of a particular age, a particular generation, what we needed, what we need was for someone to consider us, to look beyond, oh, she's mean. Look beyond that and see that what is really there is this little girl's hurting. This little girl's scared. This little girl's uncertain, right? And recognizing the humanity in that, recognizing our humanity. And so when we decide, when I sit down to pen, uh, it is not without some retrospection, some prayer, but also some excitement and some joy, because I know that what I'm sharing is going to touch somebody. I may not hear from the reader what they thought about what I've written, but I know that what I've written has touched somebody. Um, Any response, the writer has done their job. And that's kind of hard to accept, especially if you're getting harsh criticism. But if you can get the reader to talk, um, you've pretty much done your job. But if you can get the reader to act, that's the power of writing. When you can get the reader to act, and the act could be a comment, the act could be a share, the act could be a subscription coming in. The act can be contemplation. And you as the writer might not know right away the contemplation, but at some point in the future, that person's going to reach out to you and say, "Hey, you remember that article you wrote about? That thing really changed my life." And that's the thing that some of us as writers, we wait for, we look for, but you can't get hung up on it too much, because you have a job to do, right? You have a job to do. And so, this is what I, again, love about literature, about fiction and nonfiction, and in that there is great stories out there that really do call us to task, really do call us to take a look at our vulnerability, really do call us to take a look at what does it mean to serve, to have a servant's heart, and what does it mean to be human. And again, I mentioned that in another piece I wrote, a piece I wrote earlier this week. Like I said, the piece I wrote in the Captain Jack series on white feminism and Black women in literature. Listen, I didn't get no responses on that, because I already knew what the responses were. I did not play in that. I mean, I kept it respectful, but let's be very clear: Black women are not treated well in literature. Feminism has not included us. And yes, we have Black feminism. I am a huge fan and share the work of Bell Hooks, but I'm a womanist through and through. And I will say that when I take a look at the positioning of Black women in feminist movements and in feminist texts, when we look at Black women in early American literature, it everyone wins but us. Everyone wins on our backs. You see this in film, you see this in theater, you see this in literature. Everyone wins but us. And so one of my charges as a writer is to uh, give us the win. And again, the win is in the resistance and self-care. Right? She said that in the teacher, that part, everyone wins on it. It's everybody. And you wonder why it's so why Black women for the most part are so hard. Why the conversations we're seeing right now in the community is rest. I love the nap ministry. Oh my goodness. I am a huge fan of Miss Hershey on that. I found out about her, discovered her in my womanist courses, because this nap ministry is so much what has this killed us. This working for others to succeed at the expense of our own mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and financial well-being. It's Hershey, Trisha Hershey, Hershey. I've talked about her in some of my posts, my Substack posts. You can find her, find her in Natisha. But the Nap Ministry, you need to go. I got her. I have her book. Where's my book at? I just posted up the book yesterday. Hold on, let me get that for you. My chair doesn't send me flying. This is Rest is Resistance by Trisha Hersey. Excuse me, Hersey. Phenomenal work talking about the impact of capitalism on the uh, mindset of people, of Black women in particular. This idea that rest is a luxury, or that Black women are not allowed to rest. We must work, 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 work. So when we look at how there are more Black women have more education than any group, we have more degrees than any group. We have to look at why. Why do Black women continue to pursue more than 1 degree, or 2 degrees, or 3 degrees? Why are more Black women in college than any other group? There's a lot to that. And that's not to put down my sisters, because I have 3 degrees myself and about to get a fourth. But what is it that pushes us? And again, we can look at, Black women taking care of their families. We are the sole breadwinners, sole providers, caregivers. But the problem is we are dying faster than anyone and younger because we are not allowed to rest. And the NAP ministry, Trisha Hershey's concept of rest as resistance, it's a womanist concept, is phenomenal in helping to rewire the way that we think about rest. I also have her. You can also purchase her, Miss Natisha. You can go to the Black African American Cultural Arts Museum in DC and buy not only that book but also buy her NAP Ministry card deck, where you pull out a card every day and it gives you a message and a direction for that day in terms of rest. It's phenomenal, and I use that. I use a lot of her work as well as Patrice Cullors' works, and of course Bell Hooks, as I said, and a lot of women in the canon, to remind to remind us and encourage you to tell your story, why it's so important to do that, and whether that's on a national scale or just in a journal or just in a Substack, why that's important. So I'm not going to hold you too long, because I want to make sure that I have another. Um, I need to finish a chapter on a book that I'm working on for teachers and students, again about this mindset. But I want to share with you that I'm offering a one-time session, a 60-minute session called From Journal to Page, and it's a mini writing intensive. I put a feeler out there yesterday asking if people would be interested in doing a 1 hour Zoom with me, where I help you figure out how to take a diary entry or a journal entry and prepare it for whether you want to make it a blog, or if you want to make it a Substack post or a social media post. But for the woman like me in my world, my category, my age group, or anyone who is sitting on the sidelines looking at all this stuff that's happening and is saying, I have something to say, but I don't know how to say it. I don't know how to write it down. I'm offering this opportunity to work with me one on one for an hour, uh, to help you take whichever journal entry or diary entry or idea that you have, and create a draft for it, create the outline for it, and give you some of my resources that I use to help get to help publish my work, prepare it for publication. So that is, I'm only charging a one-time fee of $99 for this opportunity to sit with me. And so if you're interested in that, shoot me an email at Rebecca at rlpproductions.com, or you can direct message me, or you can text me my number. I'm gonna try to put it in the chat for you guys real quick if I can. send me a text message, and I'll be happy to send you the a calendar payment link and all that, and we can go from there. But this is really again for um, someone who is ready to enter, as we talk about in my classes. You are ready to enter the conversation, right? You're ready to get your. I forget how to get the thing on my screen. There we go. You're ready to. You want to try this. You want to see how you can use storytelling as a form of as resistance to being silent, to fear, being a resistance to fear. Um, how to begin to heal yourself through the words. Words are so powerful. They can take a life, save a life. And I've been saying this for 30 plus years, and I'm a witness to it because it's done it for me. It has saved my life on more than one occasion. So if you're interested or you know someone who is interested, again, it's $99. One time you can schedule your Zoom session with me and we'll get on there and we'll take a look at what you have. I'll give you some writing prompts, some tools and resources to help you craft this thing and get it out. Okay. Again, whether it's linked on LinkedIn, Substack, Medium, on your Instagram, in your newsletter, whatever it is, this is what I do. I help people tell their stories as I'm telling my own. So, sis, I hope this was good for you in this live. Again, I will do this again. I think this is a good idea. We can talk about again what it is to be a Black woman in America with stories, what it means to be a Black woman in America that is continually and aggressively now trying to eliminate our stories, our presence, our heart, our vibe, all that. Um, we need to have more of these conversations about self care and vulnerability, right? So again, you can send me a text. I'm going to put my email, my direct email in here as well. I think it's on my Substack account. Yeah, it is, but I'm still going to put it here. If you want to screenshot this, I know my camera's moving here as I type this. You or anyone else, again, feel free to connect with me. Thank you so much for joining me for this quick 30 minutes. I hope you enjoy your tea and your sweet treat. I love mine. And I want to talk with you soon, sis. I love you. You take care of yourself. Share my work that is here today. The post I put out just now, again, talking about she was mean, but she was ours. And of course, follow me with Captain Jack. You can now subscribe to these for a year and get my messages automatically. You'll see the link at the bottom of each one to subscribe and support the work that I'm doing. All right. Thank you, Miss Main, for coming in. Hugs and love to you as well. Thank you so much for your kind words and restacking my work. I'm not gonna cry. At least not in front of y'all, not yet. And Letitia, girl, you know I love you. Thank you for always having my back and supporting me, girl. I appreciate you so much. All right. All right, guys. I love you. Have a good day. Bye.